Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Cole, and this is my introductory audio podcast. For this time around, I'd like to explore the topic of how ethnicity matters and how companies use ethnicity to market their products across the United States. We have with us today Raghav Agarwal, a fellow student at Purdue University, who recently came across a book which talks in detail about the strategy and has agreed to answer some questions about the topic for us. I would like to thank you for taking the time to answer our questions. And I would like to begin by asking, how did you come across this book?
It's my pleasure, and thank you for having me over here today for your introductory audio podcast. I came across Shopping for Identity, The Marketing of Ethnicity by Marilyn Halter, which is the aforementioned book, while working on an assignment for my sociology class. My professor for the class wanted us to develop certain ways of thinking while acknowledging deep inequities in the United States and being able to look at racial and other inequities in terms of long-held institutional practices. I chose this book from a list given to us because the title interested me, and I have read another book by this author which I liked. The author, Marilyn Halter, is a professor of history and a research associate at the Institute for the Study of Economic Culture at Boston University. She is also the author of Between Race and Ethnicity, Cape Verdean American Immigrants 1860 to 1965, and New Immigrants in the Marketplace, Boston's Ethnic Entrepreneurs.
What was the author's purpose in writing this book, and how did she manage to convey it?
Well, Andrew, the author wants us to look at how companies are using the newfound desire among Americans to formulate their identity based on their ethnicity. That is, the need for an authentic ethnic identification to help them grapple with their identity crisis in this fast-moving and ever-changing world, which helps companies market their products and services better. America's immigrants, new and old, try to distinguish themselves from each other and hence use ethnic goods and services to modify and signal ethnic identities in social settings. This is done since people build their identities and define others through the commodities they purchase. This book deals with the dynamic relationship between ethnic identity formation and consumer culture as it has changed during the second half of the 20th century. She mentions throughout the course of the book certain examples of companies using segmented marketing strategies to target specific ethnic constituencies. She gives the example of an Irish festival called St. Patrick's Day, a minor festival in Ireland that has become so popular in the US these days that the Home Shopping Network holds a 24-hour all-Irish merchandise event early in March.
How is ethnicity shown as being the building block of these marketing campaign strategies?
I would like to answer your question by defining the term ethnicity first. Typically nowadays, ethnicity is understood to show a perceived shared culture and real or presumed common ancestry. Ethnicity is considered to be chic these days, as you can see Americans proudly proclaiming whether they are Irish American, Italian American, German American, etc., even if they have never set foot outside of the US and know next to nothing of life and culture in these countries they came to be originating from, but just have the privilege of ancestors originating from these countries. It's because it is easy to claim such ethnic origins in today's society in the United States, where people are not rushing to assimilate to the general classification of being Anglo-Saxon, which is contrary to what their ancestors or first-generation immigrants were forced to do. The 1990 US Census data indicated that those of European ancestry who did not identify with a specific ethnic heritage had higher rates of poverty than those who did identify with their ethnic identification. Lawrence Futz, formerly the vice chairman of the US Commission on Immigration Reform, explained the dynamic in this way. Americans who cannot remember whether their ancestry was Scotch or Scotch-Irish or English tend to live in areas of rural poverty. They are sure about their American identity and uncertain about their particular ancestral origins. Compared to the descendants of more recent immigrants, such as Italian Americans, Polish Americans, etc., they tend to be poor. Thus, American companies realized that they needed to win or keep the loyalty of various ethnic minorities who have a buying power that is close to $1 trillion annually, 70% of which they spend on consumer goods, which is the reason why these companies spend close to $2 billion a year to develop targeted advertisements. This non-Anglo population, which is referred to as the New Americans by marketers, cannot be ignored with such a compelling share of the country's buying power in this current rush for corporate profit.
And what is your opinion of the book?
In my opinion, this book is very well written, and I would recommend reading it if someone were interested in to see how businesses market their products with respect to ethnicity in today's marketplace in the United States. From a sociologist's point of view, this book looks at the issue of ethnicity and how it is a tool adopted by the companies to further their business interests presently and how that is different from the early 20th century. In the past, immigrants coming to the US were supposed to undergo considerable assimilation so that they are accepted in this country. They were supposed to forget their culture, forget about the past, and throw away their culture to be accepted into America. Aaron Lansky, the founder of the Yiddish organization, gave the example of his grandmother's arrival in the United States in the early part of the 20th century. He told the author how his grandmother arrived at Ellis Island with only one suitcase which had all her belongings, only to have her older brother, who had immigrated earlier, to throw away her suitcase in the New York harbor, telling her sister that she was American now and she had to leave the old country behind. But times have changed, and passage of the Immigration Reform Bill in 1965 has led to drastic demographic changes in the country's racial and ethnic composition. As I had mentioned earlier in the interview, it's in vogue to be a hyphenated American these days, with people claiming to be German-American, Polish-American, etc. The incessant need for the American people to have an identity and how ethnic identification persists and has subsequently increased after 3 or 4 generations in this country has made it acceptable to proclaim yourself different from the masses. An American-born Jew explains it pretty well when she reflects that it's okay to be Jewish now, and when I was a little girl, it was not okay. And even in the 40s and 50s, it was just beginning to be okay. Now it's kind of chic. When everybody is eating bagels and everybody has Yiddish in their conversation, with the Americans asserting their ethnicity in social settings by increasingly consuming ethnic products made at large scale and small scale levels, it is a good reason why companies are trying to market to this vast market with this big potential revenue.
Does the book answer whether a person's ethnicity matters in the US?
One cannot say that this book completely explains the concept of how ethnicity matters in the US, because it looks at only one aspect of it. It doesn't look at how ethnicity matters when you're getting a job, a promotion, education, etc. But it does explain in detail how it matters in the world of marketing. This book has been an attempt to combine the study of modern consumerism with that of ethnic identity. It is difficult to research in the relationship of all the 3 recent interpretive categories of identity, ethnicity, and consumption, but research exists, and it goes back as 1916 when advertising companies were hired to evaluate the shopping preferences of targeted immigrant populations in selected cities such as Chicago in an attempt to change their consumer patterns so that they would change their loyalties to chain stores rather than neighborhood stores. Furnishing the needs of new immigrants of various different ethnicities makes business sense now, since the number of immigrants living in the US has tripled since 1970 from 9.6 million to just about 27 million immigrants. And immigrants have also overtaken the growth rate of native-born population. The motivation to want to identify with a common cultural ancestry is prevalent throughout America today, whether it's for few immigrants searching for a nostalgic taste of their homeland or third-generation ethnics attempting to reconnect with their heritage. These aforementioned demographic changes and growing acceptance of identifying with your heritage is making all companies take ethnicity target marketing seriously to bolster their profits, and hence making ethnicity matter in the marketplace.
Alright, I would like to thank Raghav for answering my questions today, and that concludes my first audio podcast.
And thank you, Andrew.